Sorry, it's being very stubborn. This is actually a continuation of the one that we had a few months ago that was about child abuse and child abuse reporting. And we're adding in the Erins Law and stuff about the assembly bills and what is coming up and what we're going to be doing as far as child safety education. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Know that Erins Law that we're talking about is what it was put into place a couple years ago that said that schools would be required to teach children about personal safety and how to get away from being abused, hopefully, in such ways that it would be appropriate to their childhood stage. And that we as educators, all of us, have to recognize what child abuse is so that we can help them to understand how important it is that they know that stuff. The objectives, while we're here, we're talking about what I said. We also are adding in some info about child trafficking, because that now is considered part of child sexual abuse and required by the statutes as well. We're talking about specifically Senate Bill 258 and 261 and Erins Law. What needs to be taught. I'm going to give you the resources that the school district is using right now that we're going to start picking up, I hope. And they're doing theirs kind of on their school education line. So I think that's probably what we'll end up seeing in the long run for when we start doing this. Know that child abuse is any recent act or failure to act on the part of a parent or anybody that takes care of that kid that can result in any kind of physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse, or exploitation, which is the trafficking. And that's what that second little bullet is that it was added in. That is the child trafficking is now recognized as a huge issue, and that's why we're talking about it. So facts. It can occur in any family, anytime. Let me just say that. It doesn't matter. Right now, I gotta tell you, child abuse is rampant out there. I have a friend who's a teacher was right in the middle of a big Zoom meeting with her class, and one of the kids said, "I have to talk to you right now." And like they went out to a breakout room, and she disclosed that she was being abused at the time. And the person that was doing it was helped her. The person's now out of the house, but it is like crazy the amount of stress just looking at this one instance it's caused on everybody. So know that it's out there, and if anything like that is happening, it makes it even worse. It doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter how poor you are, it doesn't matter, but the stress is making things a lot worse. And right now, just look at the suicides. We're up to what, 18 this year. That's crazy. So we don't want that. So know that the data gets kind of delayed. It's 2016, there's actually 13 fatalities, which is about a rate of 1.92 per every 100,000 kids. That's a lot. So think all the kids that are in our schools, and it's sad for them. This is from actually a little bit more recent data. Is from the Division of Child and Family Services. They put out a lot of stuff, and this is just reports. And what I wanted to show you this page for is a lot of these reports are actually from the schools or associated with people from the schools. So keep up the good work and know that we're a really important part of those kids being able to know that they can be safe. So we have to be aware of what could be and what to do about it. I also wanted to add, because especially since it's like the week it is, and it's about autism and kids with disabilities this week, that kids with disabilities are actually abused more frequently than kids in the general population. They don't have good numbers because they don't break it out, which is unfortunate, because we could do better interventions if we knew that for sure. But they think that it's about 1.7 times that of the rate of kids that don't have disabilities, which I think is a lot. The other part of that is a lot of kids with disabilities can't tell us the things that are happening. And so if it's somebody that they really trust and they don't know, it makes it harder. And with sexual abuse, so often it's somebody that the person knows to begin with, that I think that falls into here is really making this a big population group that we really want to look at and know that prevention is what we need to do to make sure that it's okay. Child sexual abuse. Any sexual act between an adult and a minor, or between two minors, when one exerts power over the other. And then also it's defined as forcing or persuading a kid to engage in any kind of sexual act. It can be physical, which everybody, that's all people just think sometimes it's just physical stuff. It isn't that though, but the physical parts that they can have is touching parts, exposing kids, putting them on porn, washing them dress in different places, in talking to them in inappropriate ways. And also that brings in the sexting as well. And that's why I think, well, California got really very liberal in their recent laws they passed, but they made it so some of this stuff isn't abuse. And I think that'll come back to hurt them, because what about the kids that really this is something that needs to stop? And I'm afraid that some of these kids are going to get lost in the cracks really bad. So we don't adopt those same laws. Know that includes behaviors like fondling or penetration. It doesn't have to include those though. It can just be the other things we were talking about. Do know that the kids don't usually fully comprehend what's happening. They don't give consent to it. They can't give consent to it because they don't understand what it is. And a lot of times they're not developmentally prepared for, and they can't even give the consent so that they can say no. Some warning signs, and especially in the schools, I think it's really hard for some of these, because, you know, when I worked as a nurse, this kind of stuff came up periodically, and we had different things that we looked at. But for here in the schools, we're going to look for those kids that, you know, they're saying, you know, I have nightmares every night, but you know, just not any reason why. Or all of a sudden, this really calm kid is super aggressive, or a kid who normally is very, you know, interactive and kind of, you know, happy, all of a sudden he's really depressed or withdrawn. And so we look at those as possible reasons. Could they be withdrawing from what's going on around them? Are they like totally removing themselves from things? Did their academic status go from like somebody that was doing reasonably well to not even trying to do anything? Did the kid run away? Did they try to commit suicide? You know, how many times do we have those kids that present as, you know, possibly being depressed enough to like slit their wrists or whatever, or cut themselves, and find out that there's really something going on, but nobody knew about it. So the other way that hopefully just in the high schools, but probably up through starting in middle school, you'll see some of these kids start looking different and trying to look much older than they are, because nobody was paying attention to them. So looking for some way to make somebody say, hey, something's going on, let's do something. Adolescents, other things you'll see eating disorders, you'll see self-injury, especially cutting and stuff. You'll see them starting to abuse drug, alcohol. They'll be more promiscuous. They could run away. They could be suicidal. But the academic problems will be something that you will definitely see. What about child abuse? How often is it? I mean, is it something that we see or don't see? Did you know that 1 in 4 kids, and that are girls, and 1 in 6 that are boys, are sexually abused by the age of 18? So that if any of us were thinking, oh, you know, we're never going to see any kids in our school that if this has happened to, we're wrong, because there's kids out there right now that this has happened to. It's estimated there's about 42 million survivors of child sexual abuse, and that 3 million of those kids, they're still kids, but it's still happening to them. 93% of the time, the kid knows who it is that's abusing them. And 9 out of the 10 kids never even tell anybody. So I think these numbers are probably way even higher, because we just don't know. And there's really, that's, you know, bad for those kids, because those kids will never be the same. I had a girl who I grew up with who was like, should have probably been valedictorian, who got abused by her brother-in-law when her sister-in-law had surgery for 4 months that nobody ever knew about, and she was never the same. So to this day, she's never the same. I mean, we're much older now. 90% of kids that are sexually abused is by somebody they know and somebody that they trust. There are about 747,000 registered sex offenders in America. I strongly suggest for everybody that they should check any sex offenders that are registered in their areas where they live, especially if they have little kids or grandkids or anything that come over. And keep your kids away from those houses as much as you can. And, you know that there's certain rules they have to follow. Know that these kids, like I said, are at all of our schools, and that we need to talk to students and tell them, you know, there's some things we can do if you think that you're unsafe or if somebody's touching you wrong. So that's what today's about. The mean age for kids is 9 years. Think about that. That is like a third or fourth grader. And it can go anywhere from babies that are abused sexually. And I have seen those. I had care of one that was 4 months old that was sexually abused, really sexually abused, a little girl. And then they can go up to 17 to be considered pediatric. So that, know that that's where that falls in that age, the peds age range here. The primary reason that the public's not aware of what is going on is because nobody tells anybody about it. And, if they do, they say, well, that's okay. I'm sure it was a one-time thing and they don't care that it's been done day and day and day and day and again. A lot of these kids don't tell anybody for a couple of years. So, if they don't tell anybody, that means that stressor was never removed. And so all this damage has been done physically maybe, but mentally for sure, it's years old at this point. More than 90% of juvenile sexual abuse victims know who they were abused by, but never tell. 35% of convicted child molesters use threats of violence to keep the kids so they don't tell anybody. It also keeps them from going to jail, they think. So they tell them, we're going to kill your cat. We're going to, we'll go and we'll, kill your mom and your dad. We'll go, if it is their mom, their dad, we're going to kill your brother. We're going to kill, it's crazy. We're going to kill your best friend. And the kids don't know better than to think that that's really going to happen if they do tell. So that's a huge stigma as well. About 20 to 25% of child sexual abuse cases involve penetration or some kind of contact, oral genital contact, and that's even in the little tiny kids, unfortunately. There are some misconceptions. Some people think kids really aren't in danger, that if that's happening, it's not anything bad. That's not true. Educating kids puts ideas in their heads. That's not true. It actually makes them prepared so that if anything does happen, we can stop it. It's a misconception that we'll scare the kids if we tell them this stuff. I think if you're actually honest with kids, that's certainly not going to be. Know that body safety includes lessons on sex. That's not what we're talking about. We're not telling them how to have sex. We're telling them how to keep themselves safe from things that they shouldn't have to be exposed to at their age. Some think that kids are too young to learn about personal body safety. And some others think that the kids are making stuff up and that this doesn't really happen in any kids. And we know that's not true. Know that when I talked about sexual abuse, I said that human trafficking was also something that is a huge issue. Human trafficking is considered modern day slavery. It includes trafficking and labor for sex, for labor. It can take kids over state lines. I know when I worked at the health district at one time, the person I was helping did the sexual abuse clinic at the there, and he told me about some of the stuff they did. And one of the things that they had studied is how many people were transported to other countries for sex, and they paid for that, and that it was considered okay in those countries, and that now that it was coming here, so that's why they changed a bunch of laws and policies and stuff, is because they found that it was often actually more profitable to have them here, to keep them in the hotels and stuff. And that's just crazy to me. So that porn and stuff was rampant and nobody thought anything of it. Though these kids don't know that what they're doing is wrong. They think that this person loves them, and that's why they're, they said, here, come, meet me, from a text or something, or from something on the computer. They come, then they think, I'll get these pretty jewels, or I'll get this, great food if I come and I just, do what they say to do. And it's easy for them to get into that, almost impossible for them to get out. It can be any sex, age, race, whatever, but are finding that kids that are in the foster care and kids that are in out of home care are more vulnerable, and that adolescents are finding a huge population in right now, unfortunately, and they're really soliciting that. Know that it isn't just other places, not Las Vegas. These are 3 things I pulled off recently off of the internet. One was from 4 days ago. It's about they had a sting in LA where they rescued 33 kids that were in a trafficking situation. They called it the City of Angels. That so they called it the Angel Sting, and they rescued those kids. I don't know that they'll be the same, whatever. No, the FBI is actively has things up on their site for kids that are missing kids and stuff, and for trying to identify traffickers. Know that this the TV screen was actually my TV screen one day. I was watching TV and I just happened to see that, but it was about some arrests they'd made in December here of traffickers, and that the bus company, the RTC, recently actually put a human trafficking awareness campaign into place so that they could make people aware of trafficking, and that we need to know about it so we can stop it, kind of thing. These kids could get into this in certain ways. Sometimes it's just fraud. You know, they think that they're talking to a kid on the computer, ends up being a 50-year-old man who takes them and grabs them, or it could be physical force. They just grab them as they're coming home from school. It could be some kind of trickery, or it could be, unfortunately, and it seems to be sad right now, is people are finding that they're selling kids. The parents are selling kids because it gets them money so that they can live, and they don't think it's anything to hurt kids. So, and have more. These are just some kinds of trafficking that are put out by the U.S. Department of the State. It can be forced child labor, where they do something for the perpetrator so that they get money. Child soldiers, which don't see a whole lot, but I'm afraid it happens way more than we know. Know that they do that a lot to give other countries some, like, wives, which is scary. Also, sex trafficking, which is the forcing of kids to have sex for money. Sexual exploitation, which they're doing a lot for lately, that they're trying to stop the sexual exploitation that from the trafficking, and sex tourism. When I'm on a committee that we're going to talk about, that's on it's a task force, and I remember one of the first meetings we had, we were talking about what goes on in Las Vegas and that kind of thing, and one of the people was on there was actually a DA from Las Vegas, and he was talking about how the hotels all know that this happens, and they know that the people are being siphoned through the hotels, and that sometimes they're actually staying in the hotels for a certain amount of time, and that they knew that, but because of the money, they couldn't turn these people away, because it was their way, the hotel's a way of staying, you know, in business, which I think is sad. And I was talking to somebody the other day who said that one of her friends works for the health district for the environmental health, and they were called for a sewage thing that was stopped up. And when they went to investigate this horrible, you know, smell or whatever, they were looking around in the hotel that they were at, and they went in and they were looking through the windows of one of the rooms, and they saw 8 young women handcuffed to the floor with these bracket things that were naked, that were obviously used for this tourism kind of thing, which it makes me kind of sad that this stuff happens, and yet we don't make big inroads into making it where it doesn't happen. Know that Las Vegas is actually this is a recent, not that recent on this one, but it shows that we're really high in both the ranking of number of calls and the calls per amount of the population that we have. I mean, if we have 6 and we're 6 and 5 on those rates, look at all those phone calls that say, you know, something's going on here. You know, we think some kids there, we think something's going on, you know, so there's some trafficking going on. That's just sad. And in fact, the Nevada, Impact Nevada did this graphic not that long ago, and it said that we were 10th in the nation in the number of trafficking cases that actually get reported to the hotline, which I think is just way too high. And that we're one of 13 high intensity child prostitution areas in the United States. So that's why we do what we do to teach, but we also need to know that what's going on out there is that there's kids that are being trafficked and kids that are being abused. So we need to I'm glad that we're finally putting something into place that would hopefully help to alleviate these numbers some. Know that this is a really nice website. You guys should all get the PowerPoint at some time, so you should be able to see this after we're done. But it has I left the websites on for people so that they could see where they could go if they wanted it more information, if they want to know about, what programs are out there, if you guys want to come volunteer, there's many opportunities to do any of the stuff. So that's what those are. And know that actually January is actually the National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. So it just so happens that we can hit that in this lecture here today. But that the National Child Traumatic Stress Network is one of the places that does a lot of different things, and they have trainings and stuff. So if anybody's interested, you can also go to that site. It's a really good one. I know that there's lots of human trafficking information going out around there right now, and that I know even though Terra Oil does a big thing about let's try and prevent human trafficking, and let's look at what we can do to make people more aware this happens so that maybe we can stop it. So this is just one of the many posters, and I did it so you guys would have the website for that as well. So what do we need to know? Adults, as adults, we want to take steps to prevent child sexual abuse. Kids are need to have safe environments that are nurturing, and that so we're putting in some resources for child sexual abuse that we can work on instead of just doing treatment for when it's already happened. Let's put some stuff into place so that we can actually do prevention instead. We worked really hard on once they're treated, let's get them some help, let's get them into some kind of normal environment, let's try and fix the things that have been broken at this point. But I think if we put some evidence-based strategies in place, it's going to be better, and maybe we can keep all kids safe, which would be really nice. I don't know who that is. So what is happening? So in 2013, there was actually a Senate bill called Senate Bill 258 that created what I'm on, which is the Task Force for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse of Children. And it said, okay, we know something's going out there. We really need to do something. Let's look and see what can be assessed. What do we need to do? So, they put together this team. It's actually kind of co-anchored basically by Child Abuse Prevent Nevada, which is part of Child Abuse Prevent America, obviously. And the Rape Crisis Center, who's been the most active place with them, that doing stuff for us, and has some great lecture people on there, and it's been good. And they also said, let's look at Erins Law, and it was actually put into this bill so that Erins Law was actually passed with this. Then after they did that, they said, well, how are we going to implement something like this? So then they came out with the Assembly bill that we're talking about, 261, which basically talks about outreach and education to schools, working with you guys to make sure that programs get into place that can help prevent kids being abused. So know that it's all part of the National Coalition to Prevent Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation. And it's about keeping kids healthy and keeping them healthy development and having them be safe. It's about public awareness, but obviously we hit a large amount of obstacles because this happened to take place about the same time that everybody was talking about, let's do sex education in the school. So we had some serious barriers at first, but we worked through them, and it's coming along. So this is good. This is about the task force. It is offering at this point. We're doing in-person and remote training for teachers, and so they understand about child sexual abuse, about understanding about the requirements of what we can do to keep it from happening. It talks about the programs we put into place and some of the costs and training that we'll discuss. Some curriculum implementation. If you look on the internet, there's a plethora of stuff out there, but we have some evidence-based stuff that I think works pretty well, that the school district is starting to really implement strong into there. So it should have been done by now, but like I said, we had barriers. And also give you some technical assistance as well. Know that it's been incorporated into our Nevada revised statutes, as well as just with the assembly bills and stuff. Know that that statute in 432B, which is all about child abuse in itself, it's the one, it's actually was added to prevent the sexual abuse task force to be into that. And it basically is saying, okay, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to make sure that kids know about age appropriate techniques, to recognize what it is, and to tell somebody. that school personnel all know about what it is and what to do if they see it, and that parents and guardians are given the warning signs so they know that if something's going on, maybe there's people that they can also refer to as well. So the bill itself was called Erins Law. It's aimed at protecting kids in public schools to be recognized with age appropriate instruction and personal safety, and to recognize the hazards and things that can happen, both known and unknown people, and that what we can do. And it's about teaching them to know and go, and working with the school district to implement standards so that we can get these efforts going. This is actually just a long thing. I'm not going to obviously read all that, but it's actually the law, and then that actually is it in the statutes, so that you know that all that's there. And this all went through every microphone, magnifying glass it could look through to make sure that it would work, and it is working very well. Know that. So what we've done is we've done some outreach, and we're doing education in the schools. So we're the Rape Crisis Center and the Rape Prevention Education grants that we had are kind of, I think, pretty much expired now. But they started by training about 50 people that they would train to, do training for more people, and they started implementing it recently, like probably when the pandemic hit in the school districts. This was all supposed to be in place by this school year. Obviously, this school year is different than most, so that hasn't really happened. But they also, we worked to get together the Nevada Coalition to prevent the commercial exploitation of kids, so the trafficking. The hardest part, the thing that we did, we're going to talk about in a minute, is the revisions to the Nevada health standards, which is what the teacher, it's our health standards that we use to teach. So it's actually all the stuff has been incorporated into this at that point. And we used a lot of different states resources and met with a lot of people, Amanda and the people from Nevada, to Prevent Nevada. They went and they talked to people. They had did a million different webinars and stuff to go listen to, and personally went to them to find out what would work so that we could revise ours to work for us. And they came up with a sexual education curriculum that isn't about teaching about sex, but teaching about safety in your personal life. And they're working on getting this all put into place better than it is at this point. 261, like I said, is the one that said that, okay, we got to get this out into the schools. With that, we also have to say, okay, we're teaching our people what this is so that they know to get it out in the schools. And that isn't only just the school districts, regular school districts. It actually has a Nevada revised statute that was added for the charter schools as well. So that we are also part of all this is going on, so that we can work on getting this health standards and developed and put into place. Remember that the personal safety of children means that it's an age-appropriate recognition of the hazards and dangers that are particular to kids. So, kids is not about dating and, little kids about dating and stuff. It's about knowing that when somebody's doing these things, it's not right, and that they need to tell some responsible adults so they know it. Erins Law. Erins Law is named after a girl. Her name is Erin Marin, and she was a young girl who was cute as a button, but she was went to a girlfriend's house, which I have a video where it shows that went to a girlfriend's house and stayed, and her neighbor, and she was raped that night when she stayed the night. That continued for a while. They moved, but it happened again when she moved down the street from an older cousin, who then started doing it to her as well, and then started with her sister, and that's what stopped it. So they decided, she said, we're done with this. This is not okay to stay silent. Let's do something. So she said, she actually aged on. She did well without having that happen to her, but became a social worker, got her MS social worker, and said, what, I live in Illinois. Let me talk to the legislators. Let's see if we can do something to prevent this from happening. Then she went on a mission. Then she said, okay, if I can get it to go in Illinois, why can't I get it everywhere? So her mission is to go all 50 states and get age-appropriate curriculum to tell people that, sexual abuse is not okay to touch kids. Okay. Let me know, you guys, if you cannot hear this.
I came from a family of 3 girls, and I felt like I had the perfect life. I was the happiest little 5 and 6-year-old and had so much fun as a child. I struggled for years in my childhood with watching my family suffer. It tore our family apart. I went down the path of self-injury, a suicide attempt, very depressed. This could be happening to your child. This could be happening to your next door neighbor, your best friend you've known your entire childhood, and you had no idea because of the shame that people carry. When I was a kindergartner, I had been asked by my best friend Ashley to spend the night. And I was excited, that little kid going off to my first sleepover. And after watching a Little Mermaid, we went into her room to go to sleep. She climbed up in her bed and me on the ground in my little sleeping bag, fell asleep, and eventually I woke up to the bedroom door opening and looked over there, and there her uncle was. I thought he was checking to make sure we were asleep. And instead he closed the door, came down to where I was on the ground, told me to be quiet, and I did. I stayed quiet. He sexually abused me and told me, "This is our little secret. No one will believe you. I know where you live, Erin. I'll come get you." I pinky promised my best friend I would never tell anybody what her uncle was doing.
What is your name? Erin. And how old are you? 8.
My abuse ended when I was 8.5 and we moved. Suddenly I'm going to a new school, making new friends. Little did I realize by moving was getting me that much closer to the next perpetrator in my life. This time, it was my cousin Brian. Wake up to him sexually abusing me, and for the next almost 2 years, he repeatedly tells me, "This is our secret, no one will believe you, you have no proof that I did this." And I believed it. I believed him that no one would believe me. So I stayed silent because my only education came from these perpetrators. At 13 years old, my 11-year-old sister came to me with the same secret. My little sister blurted out the words, "Brian's gross." And I knew instantly what that meant and was just filled with anger and rage. So we broke our silence, our abuse ended, reclaimed our voice, and that was the first step in moving forward and healing our lives. Because I had my parents' support and believing my sister and I wanted other people to realize that there is support for them out there as well. Looking back on my childhood, I learned tornado drills, bus drills, fire drills. Yet there was nothing on how to speak up and tell if you're being abused. So I created Erins Law in my home state of Illinois.
Oh, this money. We made $2, actually $5. Stop, please. Just goes, okay. Plus my mom bought this fresh lemonade just to make it look cute.
Back in 2010, I was working my full-time master's level job as a counselor working with youth. I quit my job, tried to figure out a way of how I was going to explain to people that I'm going to speak about educating kids on the prevention of abuse, because my own state lawmaker said, "Erin, we don't talk about that in society. They will never teach this in school." And I made it my mission not just to get this passed in Illinois. I made it a mission to travel to all 50 states, testifying to lawmakers on the importance on this. And I tell these lawmakers I'm not going away. This is something that everyone should stand behind. Erins Law requires every year child sexual abuse to be taught in public schools. So once a year, students must be informed on personal body safety, on how to speak up and tell the differences between safe and unsafe touch, safe and unsafe secrets, and give kids these voice and educate our educators on warning signs to look for. How to properly handle when a child discloses abuse. And there are multiple stories as a result of Erins Law being passed. We need to end the stigma and shame around this subject. Legislators, parents, teachers, they need to wake up and realize that this is going on. You all know somebody that this has happened to. I really want parents to see the importance behind this, and I want kids to reclaim their voice and be able to break their silence and end their suffering. That is my mission in life. care if this takes me a lifetime and, I'm doing this at 90 years old. This is, my calling in life, and I'm going to be fighting for this until the end.
I like the video for some reason. It just shows that things can go right way if you put people into action for that. Know that at this point, there's 37 states that have passed Erins Law type legislatures. They're working on them in another 11, and hopefully those will get passed as well. That is one of the states that it has passed, since we've been speaking of. It requires age-appropriate child sexual abuse identification, and a curriculum be developed specifically for pre-K through 5th, 8th, and 12th grades, and that both teachers and parents be able to recognize and identify child sexual abuse. And it also provides for some different reporting mechanisms for staff to know how to always report child abuse. If you think it as mandated reporters, we have to do that. And so know that they recognize, respond, and report, which is what we have to do to keep the kids. School personnel are taught about child sexual abuse, and parents and guardians are taught, like I said, about the warning signs. And also they're given resources. That Erins Law website that she actually showed when she was doing on the computer there. And it's available, and it has a lot of resources on there for parents that are really nice. Not just for the ones that this has happened to, but for any parents. So I think that's referred to in the education itself, but it's there if anybody wants to look at it. I think it's some really good information on that website. Know that one of the things that we did as task force is we had to look up and fix what could be incorporated into the curriculum. And so they said, okay, well, we need to look at the health standards. So this is actually available for you to look at. They just recently made changes for 2020. This is the page. I put it there again so that you guys would have that. You go to this page first, and shows you the academic content for the health and physical education, which is what this falls under. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you get to the part that says health. And it tells you that you go up to the part that says that you click on where it says the standards are the H link, which is the 2020 link and whatever. First thing you'll see is that this is what the differences are between the old health standards and the health standards now for 2020. And it goes through what is included on it and who is included on it. And this is what it's a whole big document. It's like 28 pages, I think. And it's pretty comprehensive, and there's a lot of stuff in it, and I hope that it's clear for everybody. But this is just an example of a couple of the pages. This one shows what would be taught across the different levels. It shows you from K to 5, the different things. This is just about personal space. It's about knowing who's safe as an adult. And it shows how they give examples and how they can need to report and say something to somebody. And then up to middle school, and they start adding about some personal boundaries, and they talk about recognizing boundaries of other people. In the high school, when you also want to add in, about dating and the importance of not going past those boundaries when you're dating. And I think in some of these spots right now, they're actually doing some stuff about dating safety as well. This
Kim,
one shows,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do have a question in the chat.
Okay.
That is, Corey Detmer asked to clarify that the previous slide said 8th and 12th grade versus 8th through 12th grade. Are 6, 7, 9, 10, 11 not included?
I think it's going to depend on the organization, because it has to be incorporated in that spot. Like the 8th grade one is actually 6 through 8th. But I don't know. They haven't. The problem is the school district hasn't really said how they're doing their thing yet, how they're dividing it up. I think they're because there's not always health classes, so I think it's going to depend on where they fall in those. It actually that's the way it's actually printed on the thing, and I know I saw that too. Because 12th grade is way too late to wait for high school. It needs to be way before that, because 12th grade, half the kids don't go to school, so for half the day or whatever. So As far as I know, it's a range, not a grade. That makes sense? That
It
answer?
does to me. Corey, does that answer your question?
They're on mute, so they can tell her to put it in the chat, Corey.
Sort of. It just seems like conflicting because law is what it says K-12.
It is let me go back to the slide.
So the law says K-12, but Erins Law says 8 and 12.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me go back. Only my thing let me. Hold on a second. So I don't know what slide she's talking about. So hold on. She's talking about that one. And then okay, hold on. The way I understand it, we're doing it through the range. It's been incorporated into every grade, so that into different parts for the curriculum for each grade is the way I'm understanding that the CCSD has implemented it, is they are incorporating it into every single grade that they teach. They're not just doing it in 8th grade. They're not just doing it in 12th grade. That they have a 6th grade component, they have a 7th grade component, then they have a 9th and a 10th and 11th grade component as well.
Okay, thank you.
That works?
Yeah.
Okay, I took my share off, sorry. I think I was to here, but this one shows how on the health curriculum they actually added in the later elementaries about the technology and social media, which I think are really important that we have added on there. And that we have the ability to talk about human trafficking as well, and that those are being put in this, and then they actually added on about some of the STD kind of stuff, which I don't know how much that's going to go over really, but it's in there, so we'll see how that all works out. But it does talk about for the lower grades about knowing about the body parts and anatomical terms, so that other stuff will be built upon that. And that's it. And healthy relationships, big part of the middle and high school ones, because it's important that dating, violence, and stuff like that is all incorporated as well. So somebody has their mute not off on, I guess I should say. I can hear TV. So what we start, it's all good. It's all good. When we started doing all this stuff, what they did is just find out the interest of how we were going to get this all implemented, is they sent a letter out to the different schools in 2015, had very, very low response back at first. That's gotten better more recently, but he basically went over what we were going to try and put into place, talking about danger to kids, talking about, them being aware, talking about teachers needing to know this stuff, know, all the different parts. And they said that originally we were supposed to have all this in place for the 2020-2021 school year, but like I said, that didn't really happen. But they are working on it for the school district now, actively doing classes and getting up there in the number, so we'll see. But then every year they will say, we're going to do this and this is what we're going to add on or whatever. So this was the original letter. That's part of the original letter. What it did say too is that so that we didn't put large resources on the school district to have to do it themselves, that we were going to put lots of stuff into place to try and help them to get the education into place without having to pay anything. And it'll be training for their time, but that they can hopefully incorporate it into their teacher days and things like that, so that they don't totally undermine trying to people trying to do this on their own, which would take a lot more time. They're also working with all the school social workers, help with the implementation as well. I want to say that from what I understand, that's probably been the biggest assistance in the school district so far, as they've been able to put together teams that has really made a huge difference in what they're getting done. They also are doing remote trainings. I think I don't know what the name of their platform is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're using that. And they also are doing this up in northern Nevada as well, and looking at training things and ways that they can do this, that it helps get the most people that it can. Prevent Child Abuse Nevada has training staff that do this. Like I said, the Rape Crisis Center has been invaluable for us is a resource in making sure these get the classes that have been done so far. They've been the big, huge people for that. These are just a few kinds of programs that are actually available. Some of these you have to pay for. There's a lot more than this actually that are out there, but know that as far as in the state of Nevada, these are the ones they've looked at that they think that might be useful for them. The ones on the right hand side, you can see where it's provided by the Care for Kids is actually partially by the Child Abuse Nevada, so that's helpful, as well as the Rape Crisis Center. Some of the others, it's like the city, and it's like some different companies. Nevada Child Seekers does a lot of stuff as well. So those are, and that shows you that some of them are free, some of them you have to pay. What we're seeing that's being incorporated up there right now, though, and the one that I want to focus on just for a minute for, even though I really talk fast apparently, is that there's something called the Enough Abuse campaign, and it's a child sexual abuse prevention program, and that's what they're using in elementary schools to start out. It works in getting people to know about sexual abuse. It works on training. It talks about culture. It's actually a really nice program. And the Rape Crisis Center has been the ones been putting it out, and they've been doing a great job. They can actually modify it to make it work for whatever time space you have. They can make it an hour and a half, up to 3 hours. They actually can even make it into 4 hours. They're free, and it can be a webinar if it needs to be. So it's been useful for the pandemic time. So huge advocate of that, and it's actually part of like a huge campaign, the Enough Abuse campaign, that is part of the thing that's driving some of the legislative stuff that's going on as well. So it's about making us all aware and making us all ready to know that these things are going on, so that a little bit what's in them, because people hear this and they start getting all apprehensive, because it's scary to think that we have to talk about like stuff like this with kids, but know that the early childhood stuff, so like K-2, is basically stuff that came from the Committee for Children Protection Unit, and it's like key concepts of what's safe, what's not unsafe, what's unsafe, what is a safe touch, what's a not safe touch, the touching rules. Really, 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 really emphasizing to the kids that if something happens, it's not their fault. It talks about ways to stay safe, and talks about anything that's underneath your bathing suit is private. End of statement. That nobody should touch that except for you and your parents when they're helping you wash and stuff. And they spend a lot of time on that because they think that that's an easy way for little kids to understand that it's not okay for them to be touched there. Then when you get past second grade, from 3rd to 5th grade, they look at the same things again, but they work on what I said earlier, that unwanted touches, no and go strategy. So they know that if anything feels unsafe to them, if they think something is happening, they need to say no, they need to go, and they need to tell somebody. And that big part of what they're doing too, they want to emphasize, is they want to make sure that they know never keep secrets. It's not good to keep secrets, that the secrets could hurt you. Again, they still focus on anything underneath the bathing suits is private and nobody should be touching it. But they work really hard on the refusing skill, saying no, you can't do that. So we hope that that'll really help people. Hopefully it'll help in the later ages too, when they know they don't want to, they're on a date and somebody's trying to do something they don't want, but they can say no better. So hopefully that's what will happen. Then in the middle and high school, they add on some stuff about healthy relationships and about decision making, yes or no kind of thing. Hopefully, mostly to the no. They talk about the media and the effect that the media has had on sexual abuse and what's considered okay and not okay, because it's really hurt, the ability to keep kids safe by kids thinking that it's all right. I put the picture there for it's not just Jenna. It's a like a program that's written aimed at high, middle, early high school ages. I actually think we're going to talk about it possibly at our child abuse conference we're going to do this year, but it's a really, really nicely done program with a girl. And I think they said that the girl was actually from here, but it talks about, when she had something happen to her and her journey, kind of like Erin's journey, and what enough is enough kind of thing. So that's what they really focus on in those other programs in the later grades. Because I couldn't let it go without talking about reporting a bit. Know that the Nevada revised statute says that we, as any kind of people that have anything to do with kids, are mandated reporters, and that we have to report, period. So we can't be penalized for reporting, and we need to know how to do it. So we need to know when. So we need to know that if a kid has signs that they're being abused, if a kid says they're being abused, if they said another kid has been abusing them, if we have an adult that comes in and say, I just was with this kid and I need to tell somebody, and you just happen to be the person. If you're aware of a child porn online that you see, if you see anybody that's looking at child porn, anybody that says that their family member is being abused. I think the hardest part with this, I think that people don't get it, how some people just think kids are lying, and they're not most of the time. Sometimes they'll test it out a little bit. Some kids do like attention, and I do know that happens a lot at the school. But I always have to look and see if there's a glimmer of truth in what they're saying, and at least investigate enough that I feel comfortable that nothing's happening. I reported slews of people for abuse when I was a nurse. And it's like very important that I felt that I was doing what I could, because sometimes I might be that kid's only advocate that would listen to them. And so I just never took the chance that I wouldn't be. So if somebody does tell you something like that, you obviously don't want to express that, disgusted. Oh no, what do you talk about? That couldn't be, that, you're going to get in trouble, but let them tell you, let them come forward to do that. Let them know it's not their fault. Let them know that we're going to do something immediately. And we're going to give them some options depending on what's going on. Know that if it's an emergency, you call 911. If it's not, then we will go through these, there's some other steps we take, but acknowledge that they're telling you and make them not feel guilty that they've done that. So they need to feel that somebody's listening. Know that the child abuse hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The hotline is for Las Vegas and Clark County is 1702 399-0081. I knew that number the whole time I was a nurse by heart. So, and the Washington one is there as well. Know that if you are at school, there's actually a fillable form that's available on SharePoint that you can then email or submit it on the website. There's on the website, there's actually a fillable form that you can do in there, which is, I think, the easiest way. Of course, I'm kind of into computers, so that might be why, but it's there for you to do, and it goes through each step as well. Remember, again, if it is an emergency, you have to call 911 and make sure that kid's safe. The website for the online sites there, I have a copy of the form in a second. If you're doing the one that's on SharePoint, you just do it all out, and then you can scan it and put it right to the send it right through an email to the through the link, so that you can do it that way. Either way works. Know that if you're going to call the hotline and use the physical phone call, you might be on hold for hours. They have had some serious shift of people for reporting, and so it's really hard to get through right now. But if you think it's an emergency, call 911 instead. My example I used earlier was a 5th grade teacher who 5th grade girl identified that she'd been abused and that she was unsafe where she was. So the teacher reported it right away. She actually went and headed towards the school, because she's doing remote teaching, obviously, and was going to go. They were going to bring the kids anyway. What happened is that the kid got safe. The person was put into jail, but the kid's now back with the mom, who now penalizes the teacher. She knows that she's the one who reported it by standing behind her for her remote sessions and giving her the eye, which is kind of scary. And I just want to say that that's not okay. I have a whole big issue with that. But then the other part of it is that man is out of the house and that man is not hurting her anymore. So if that's what it takes to make it so that, you know, the girl is safe and at least she wasn't penalized, thank goodness, then it's okay. So whatever. This shows you the form and the drop down form that you would do online. It'll ask you the kid's name. It'll ask you who else is in the house because they want to know who needs to be safe. Does a kid go to school? If you guys are doing from your school, probably that would be a yes all the time. And then it asks for school and stuff. It asks for demographics. It also has you, you know, put why do you think that this is happening and all that. And then the demeanor and what do we think needs to be done? Do we need to do something right away? You know, does law enforcement need to be called? Do they need to come, you know, is there domestic, is somebody, you know, beating mom too? And is all this happening? So then, and it has the, where you send this if you do this. So, and that's the form. There's also this child abuse prevention form that's a brochure that's on your SharePoint as well. If you just want to know a little bit about child abuse because you didn't get a whole lot in your past, I can fix that. I have lots of stuff on child abuse, but know that this is available for you to look at as well. And this is Erin, obviously, and she said that if somebody had talked to me in school about safe touch and unsafe touch, I think I would have spoken up as a child and not been victimized over and over again for years. But that day never came. That's why it's my mission to protect kids from childhood I couldn't be protected from. So we have an obligation to be that person that did know, that did see, and did report. Know that across the state there's stuff being done. Know that the legislature is in effect coming now pretty soon. In that there's actually a children's week, and I think some of the things that'll be discussed this year are going to be really interesting. I'm watching the bills come in. It's going to be a wild kind of year. They're making the agenda, and if you ever get interested and want to watch this, you can actually go to this website right here. It actually tells you all the bills that have to do with kids and what's going on with them, and then you can go into the website for the legislature itself and see what's happening with it. You can see who supports stuff and who doesn't and what they're trying to get passed. It's interesting sometimes to do that. There's also a conference coming up that anybody that's on this call is welcome to come to. If you're not in the list of people that are on here that get CEs for coming, we can certainly try and get that because we're putting it together, the conference right now. It's a virtual conference this year. It's on the afternoon of Wednesday, June 9th. It is in the morning of Thursday, June 10th, both 4-hour sessions. I think they're going to make it, you have to do all 8, but I think they are trying to, they're thinking about doing the 4 hours each day too, if you can only come to one or the other. But right now they're offering CEUs to any doctor, nurse, social worker. We used to do law enforcement people, but we really haven't had any come to the last few, so we're not doing that. But the social worker one actually gives all the CEs for a lot of different, the psych ones and stuff can sometimes use those same CEs. And if we know you're coming, we can work on getting CEs for you. I'm on the committee, so if you need to, let me know. We haven't finalized what the topic's going to be. The whole thing, it's called Increasing Relief, the Power of Communication and Collaboration, because that's really important, especially right now. We're probably going to have some COVID stuff. We're probably going to have some trafficking stuff for sure. We're looking for people that want to present. So if any of you have a special thing you'd like to talk about that would fit into our conference in any way, please look at that link and send us a proposal, and we'd love for you to come talk. They're really wonderful conferences. I go every year. They have a lot of really good information about child abuse on them. I like them a lot. Know also that there's the National Coalition to End Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence, and it is an organization that has a lot of good resources as well as national resources as well as Nevada ones, and it talks about all the things that's going on as far as, you know, for young dating kids and for domestic violence, which is a huge issue in Nevada. So it is there for that website, but know that it is actually February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and that they're going to be doing some stuff. So if you are at one of the schools that has high schoolers, this would be an excellent thing to know in case you needed it for information, but it's a really nice site as well. A lot of nice people work through there as well. They're actually doing a teen dating violence kind of workshop kind of thing called Survivors, My Voice, My Choice. And they're working on that. They don't have any final stuff on that yet, or I would have put it here, but it looks like it's going to be really good from what they're saying, the break the cycle stuff that they're doing. And they're working on people wearing orange on February 11th because it's supposed to emphasize kids being safe in their dating relationships. Also, if as psychs, as healthcare workers, all of us, whatever we do as teachers, know that there's apps out there that if kids feel that they're in danger, it could be helpful for them, or for if other teachers, or mostly women, but could be both women and men need. There's some things out there for domestic violence. This one here, I teach an informatics class for nursing students, and one of them actually did this app for me once, and I went and investigated. Had some issues at first, but it actually isn't bad. It's called the Inspired News app, so nobody would be suspicious of that name. But basically, it's an app that news stuff comes up, but it also has disguised into it shelter and emergency crisis information. And you can then just hit a little button and it goes away. So if somebody looks over your shoulder, you can't see. Strongly advocated. It is free. It actually was initiated and made popular by Dr. Phil's wife, who really believes in prevention of domestic violence and sexual violence. So it is a wonderful app as far as people don't know what it is, so it can help keep somebody safe, hopefully, if they needed it. And you can even link it up from what I understand to emergency services if you have to. But you can also make it look just like it's just something you're looking at on your phone, and it looks like anything else. There's other apps as well for domestic violence, and those are a couple of them that are out there. That's just the ones that came up when I just pulled it just for fun. There's I put lots of different these last couple of slides are for you guys to look at. It's a million different things as far as resources and references that might be helpful. Like I said, Prevent Child Abuse Nevada is very active. They work on child abuse prevention in all the different ways. They do the conference every year. The task force, if anybody's interested from the charters from being on it, anybody's welcome that wants to come, please do. There's CAP programs, there's Nevada Child Seekers. There is the Erins Law website that I said was really good. And there's some other websites there that a lot of information on them. And some more. I got carried away. I started going, I couldn't stop. But the Nevada Child Abuse Nevada, Prevent Child Abuse Nevada is a nice website. It has a lot of classes. The reason I threw it on here is they have a lot of classes for families on how to keep safe and not abuse your kid. And they have daddy classes, they have mommy classes, they have all kinds of training for every level of people. So if you didn't know about the site, please make it one of the ones that you know about, because it's a kind of fun site to have as a resource. We do a child abuse prevention month every year. It's in April. They plant pinwheels somewhere in the state, usually somewhere in the north and somewhere in the south, and try and make people aware that child abuse happens, and that any of us can be the one that can save that child. There's the references I use, and now ready for questions. Now you can unmute people. Did you guys get the chat? Do I have any? I need to answer.
Yes, you do have one. It says, do you know if there's a cost to Just Not Jenna?
I am not sure. I can find out though for her, whoever wants it. I need.
That was Corey Detmer.
Okay. Yeah. I can certainly find out. I want to say, I believe that the Rape Crisis Center might have already paid the cost, so you might be able to get it right from them.
Okay. And then how can they find out when the health standards have been finalized and approved? They went to the website, but it doesn't show anything or any provisional.
From what I understand, they're approved. They went out. Well, I shouldn't say that. They went out for approval.